This is Rich Lieberman. The Saturday Media Pulse is on the air live on YouTube. If you're watching live, welcome aboard. If you are watching at a later time, welcome aboard also. And it is good to be with you. Somebody on one of the commentors was saying that I had an obsession, their words, obsession with KGO. And I did, and I'm proud of it, and I'm very, very, very fond of it because growing up when I did, you had various radio stations, but KGO was very special. I think I've talked about this before, but I grew up in the 70s in the Bay Area. And at San Francisco, it was KFRC, which was the AM top 40 station, and they had great. And this is what they legitimately were called disc jockeys because they played discs and they were personalities. And it was just a treasure to listen to KFRC. They had all the great contests. They gave away swag, and it was all Barry Manilow and Lionel Richie and Toto and all these great 70s groups, Pablo Cruz. Later on, Huey Lewis. But KFRC was magical, and I don't begrudge anybody who admitted that they listened to top 40 on AM because in that time of growing up, AM top 40 KFRC was Dr. Don in the morning, and it was a magical station, and it was cool, and all these personalities and passionate disc jockeys like Don St. John and Marvelous Mark and Bobby Ocean. And of course, Dr. Don in the morning ruled. But KGO was, and I did have an obsession, and I'm proud of it because it was more than a radio station. It was like listening to a town hall that you can turn on free of charge every day. And I was fortunate enough as a teen to be able not only to meet Ron Owens, and I'll never forget it, July of 1976. So we're coming up on 49 years ago. And I think I told the story, but I'm going to tell it again. So KGO was just beginning to pick up the Oakland Raiders, and they had training camp Family Day. It was the last day of July in 1976, and I got my mom to get in the car, and we all drove up to Santa Rosa where the Raiders were training, and Ron Owens was the MC, and I met Ron. I had my Rock Rich t-shirt on, and I was a regular caller on Rock Trivia, which Ron had on every Friday night, and happened to be emceeing the Raiders Family Day back in, my God, 1976, when I was 13 years old. And we became friends. And he was this talk show host out of Cleveland, and he worked in Miami, and he worked in Atlanta, and he came from Atlanta to the Bay Area in San Francisco. His first year at KGO was 1975, right around Thanksgiving time. And I called him Thanksgiving night in 1975. And he would begin a tenure at KGO that was, hell, almost 40 years. Got to know him. He invited me in person to meet him at the Marina Green in San Francisco and to be on KGO as Rock Rich and take part in Rock Trivia. Now, those of you that don't know what Rock Trivia was, this was Ron and assorted guests, and they would ask trivia questions like, who did this song? And this was obviously before the internet, so nobody could look up and Google what have you. It was all who did this song? Um, who did Black is Black, Los Bravos? And pretty soon that became one of the most popular features with Ron on KGO radio. And I got to take part. And I developed a kinship and I developed a following. And Ron would have me on periodically with other characters like Mill Valley Dawn and Boy Howdy and all these amazing guys, mostly guys or a few women, that took part in rock trivia. And Ron was the captain of this feature. And I I loved radio. That's what made it so fantastic. And to this day, I still love radio. But Ron was infinitely listenable too. And he'd have on, well, Friday night was the absolute best when he had rock trivia on, when he did a feature called Status, Class, and Tacky. And then, of course, one of my favorites, Ron did a segment with Honest Chuck, a real character that a young guy that Ron took liking to and helped. And it's a long, 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 long story, but maybe one of these days I'll tell it. I don't want to get deep into the roots on that. But, folks, I had a very unique time growing up. And Ron was the most incredible person. Did he have an ego? Of course he had an ego. We all had egos. Everybody has an ego, especially those who work in radio. But he was so supportive and extremely helpful and likable. Um, I was never able to listen in my early days to Cousin Brucey, the famous disc jockey in New York, but I got to listen to him thanks to the internet. It got developed a inkling to listen to Cousin Brucey, and I regarded Ron Owens as my Cousin Brucey. And Ron was easily becoming San Francisco's most popular radio personality. It wasn't just a talk show host, because he'd have on guests more than just political people. He'd have on celebrities, and he'd have on local people in San Francisco, restaurateurs and characters. And Bill Graham, I remember, he often had on. Phil Bronstein, who was the editor of the San Francisco Examiner, probably got real famous beyond fame when he married Sharon Stone. And Ron was really buddy with Phil Bronstein and Ed Moose, the restaurateur, and Herb Cain, and all the various big time people who were San Francisco people. And I really took a bond to Ron. And did he have shortcomings? Hell yeah. He's human. I have shortcomings. Those of you that watch me know every day when you see me, or those of you that knew me when I was growing up and have had various run-ins with various people, good and bad. It is called being a human being. Some have less issues than others. In any event, Ron was a terrific person. He would take me to Giants games, and we'd sit at Candlestick Park, and I would take the BART over to San Francisco and meet him in the area which he lived, which was right near Union Street in Cow Hollow. And he would soon meet Jan. Well, this is much more earlier than that, but he met Jan Black, who was a KGO radio newswoman, did the afternoon news. She soon migrated over to KCBS, and they had kids back in 1988. God, that's like yesterday, and what's 37 years ago? Yeah, about that. And so I wanted to bring about the issue, and I've talked about this, that Ron is dealing with today. And I haven't spoken to him for about a month, but I did call him and called Jan and talked about this whole campaign and all that. And I may have sounded contradictory when I said I believed Ron and believed Jan Black. And I also said that I don't know what they're going through, but I do know that they're going through quite a bit of stress because of the fact that, look, Laura Owens has been accused of a lot of things. And, I don't want to get into the issues, the drama involving Laura Owens, but I'm not a parent. And I had said at the time, and I will say today, I can't imagine what both Ron and Jan are going through. And I'm not taking sides. I'm not poo-pooing the people, the men who have been accused of things that Laura Owens have accused them of. I'm not defending Laura Owens. I quite frankly have never met Laura Owens, but having known Ron off and on, and then having a very public feud with him for over a decade, and as I've indicated here, lampooning him and ripping him left and right, and saying how tragic, how ridiculous it was of him to mock his own way, or at least I mocked, his way of handling the KGO debacle that was the beginning of the end of KGO. And I had to come to Jesus moment a couple of years ago. And I said to myself, am I going to bury almost 40 years of friendship for a guy that was so nice to me, made me feel almost like a part of the family, was both a father figure and a brother figure. My father I lost way too fast, even though he and my mom were divorced, but it was very difficult to grow up in an environment where you didn't have a father, really. And then I lost my brother about 20 years ago, very tragically. And Ron was just a really nice person. He happened to be working in radio, became one of the most incredible San Francisco superstars, won a Marconi, won a Radio Hall of Fame award, and was just a really compelling figure in my life. And I felt really bad about what I did. I think I overdid it by mocking him for the manner in which he handled the loss of KGO. And I apologized to Ron for that in that regard. And because I think that I overdid it and I regret what I did. What didn't regret criticizing Ron for the manner in which he handled the KGO thing, which I also don't want to get into deep in the weeds, other than to say that I thought he could have done a better job. But having said all of that, my upbringing was very limited. It was basically my mother. And Ron was a very integral part of my life. And I was there when he met Jan Black, and had basically these two kids, two older daughters now, one of which is involved in a very public case that hasn't been covered much by the Bay Area press. I'll leave it at that. But um, suffice to say, yeah, I did have an obsession with KGO. And one thing that I'll never forget, and I'm so damn lucky to have befriended Ron, and he was so nice. He was special. He took me, as I said, to Giants games, and we went to various other parties. He let me in on certain things in his life growing up, and I'll never forget it. And look, I know a lot of you who worked with Ron, because I know a lot of people in the industry watch my show. I'm not saying that to be braggadocious. I'm just saying I know it's evident. And Ron had shortcomings, as I say stated. We're all human. We all have shortcomings. And he was always upbeat. He was always happy, and even when he was sad, um, he took the time to be very nice to me. I remember when my mother passed away, um, at the end of 2018, and even though we'd had feuds, and I was obviously, um, and had spoken about how he handled the KGO thing. I may have overdid it, but whatever. When my mom passed away, Ron called. And he says, Rich, I know we have had some issues crop up in life and all that, but I wanted to tell you I'm with you. I'm sorry about your mom. And this was, mind you, when my brother had passed away. My aunt and uncle passed away. And my sisters were away. They were distant. They were overseas. And it was difficult because literally there was nobody to talk to. And Ron called me. And he says, don't make this public because I don't want it to be. It's between you and me. I'm there. I'm there for you if you need me, because I know a lot of your family is gone. You've lost a lot of your family. And I had shared that moment with a lot of people until now because I was thinking about what Ron had done that he didn't have to do, because he himself lost his father years and years and years ago. And not that long before I lost my mother, Ron lost his mother. And although he lost his mom, at least he had Jan and he had two daughters and various other family people. But he called me when I lost my mother and told me that, well, I just told you, if you need me, Rich, I'm right here. And when you have no family, and most of your extended family, in addition to your little family that you have, are dead, because not just having lost my mother, but I lost my dad, my brother, very tragically, and my aunt, my uncle. In fact, my aunt, my mom's sister, had passed the night before I lost my mother. And excuse me for being emotional, but Ron Owens was there at a time when nobody else was, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. It's just I needed somebody to talk to, and I couldn't think of talking to anybody. I was just so grief stricken because I know my mom was old and getting older, and I knew that she was going to be gone, but it just hit me the wrong way. In the last couple of months before she passed, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. So when she passed, there was nobody there. And it was difficult. So I just wanted to thank Ron for being there, even though we'd had squabbles and even though we had various issues and debates in life. Um, he was there at a time, and I was absolutely heartbroken. And still to this day, when I think about it, it's difficult for me to feel the pain in which I'm sure Ron is dealing with his own life, his own various health situations, and also what's taking place that I don't know about with regards to his daughter. And look, did he have issues in life growing up? I'm not speaking for Ron. I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you what I know and what life is all about and how life can be cruel sometimes. We all look have shortcomings. I have numerous shortcomings. My mother, like every mother out there, when you need your mom and when your mom is very, very special in your life, and when you don't have much of a father figure in your life. And Ron was very, very helpful to me, and which even made it more incumbent upon me to bury the hatchet with Ron. And we had a public apology. I apologized because I said to him, look, I was just angry and upset in the manner in which you closed out the first KGO a situation. But he was there, and very few people, nobody knew the situation I was in. And he called me at a time when I didn't think anybody was going to call because nobody really knew much except Ron and maybe a few other people, but nobody you would know. And my mom was from Brooklyn. She was very, very negative in a charming way. But I'll never forget that day when I was 13 years old and we drove up to Santa Rosa to meet, at the time, the new guy at KGO. And he was so incredibly nice, not just to me, but to my mother. And yes, call me a mama's boy, call me this, call me that, rip me apart, take me to task for some of the things that I've done. But my mom was my best friend. And he was so nice to my mother. Not that he was going to be negative or, be rude to my mother, but he went above and beyond the call of duty. And my mother had a smile on her face. Because at that time, my brother was in a hospital. This was years and years ago. My brother was having problems. He was not that much older than me. And of course, my father was away because they were divorced. And my mom was by herself. And she had such a great day. Up in Santa Rosa, she was never more incredible and smiling from here to here all around than that day. And Ron Owens went out of his way to make my mom feel like a part of the family, even though I had just met him. But we had talked a lot, and I'd been on the radio show, and he was incredibly helpful, and not helpful, that's not the right word, but supportive. And this was early on. And which is why I have such a profound amount of like and respect for Ron Owens, even though Ron has dealt with issues in his own life, some of which he may have had control over, but got the best of him. And I don't want to get into that either. But some of us are able to handle issues. Some of us are a bit limited, but I'm being emotional, folks, because my mom was my best friend. And he at a time when my mom also was dealing with her own situation in life. She had been in a very gruesome accident at my house, had to go to the hospital. She had stitches all over her face and head. Thank God she lived. She fell. She fell. And we didn't think at one time she was going to be okay. And she ended up miraculously recovering from falling outside, hit her head, could have killed herself. And it just, she was a miraculous healer. But the bottom line is, I never felt so freaked out about a situation like that. And it hit me early in life. We had a lot of tragedies. My brother, numerous run ins. Ron was just always there as a friend, as a guardian, as just a good Samaritan and all that. So yes, I have an inkling towards favoritism. I'm a little biased that Ron Owens was a father figure and, like I said, a brother figure at a time when I didn't have either. So I get emotional, and I know that Ron is in the twilight of his life, and he's very much alive now. I mean, there's nothing to say otherwise. And when I think back to what some of the things that he did, it was above and beyond the call of duty and all that. And, uh, so I just wanted to reflect on that and to say that I hope to hell, and God willing, that he's got a lot more years on this planet, and that the situation with his daughter is corrected and taken care of, and that, things work out for everybody. So I wanted that on the record, and thanks for watching.